All right, we on the sound check, and we will get it cranking in just about a minute. Do not adjust your volume. Just gotta do one thing real quick. One thing I didn't do. You've tuned in to the A Plus Coaching Corner with yours truly, Carvel Monroe. Here you're going to get VIP coaching that's virtual, interactive, and practical. Listen, I began my life change decades ago, and I'm still pursuing greatness today. I've been involved with mentoring programs since 1999. That's when I won my first award, and I was featured in the Harvard Gazette for volunteering in the Cambridge Public High School. Since then, I've directed multiple mentoring programs on the East Coast. I've owned and operated a decent small business, working with my hands. I have 20 plus years in the marriage game, raising 3 children, and I've supported many others all the way to adulthood. I have taught people facing some tough circumstances, even in the county jail. But today, I am here just for you in the A Plus Coaching Corner. Yeah, I think I made my one plug that I had to do. Sound is good. Welcome everybody to the A Plus Coaching Corner. I am your host, Carvel Monroe. I think I'm doing good on my volume today. So this is our very last in this 5-part series of student success coaching. And it feels good when you come to the end of a thing. It's always good when you come to the very end of what you're working on. So today we're going to sum it all up. We're going to work on that last particular section. But before I get into that, let's just kind of build up to why we're here. Again, we're working with this whole idea of just basically coming out good, coming out better, coming out successful, coming out or finishing successful, finishing good. And so we've been working with almost like a 1-year time frame, a 9-month time frame, 6-month time frame, because we don't want to kind of focus on working on a small goal. Now, today I think is going to bring a lot more insight on why we went down this particular path. We're going to add another layer anyhow to that, because when we began, we just kind of started off talking about the idea of 1 year from today, will you be celebrated? Will you be celebrated, or will you discover that folks really just tolerated you? They kind of just put up with you, put up with your nuances and your folly, so to speak. And this is not about perfect or being perfect. It's just the idea of setting a tone that we can go into whatever environment we're in, working, whether it be academic work or you actually have a job, right? And literally be able to contend. I like to say, put your best foot forward. Make sure that person knows you're there on a daily basis, a weekly basis. You're there to contend. You're there to put your best foot forward. All right. So we've been laying down some groundwork, walking us through these things to get us ready so that we know, right? And last week we won't do that long, lengthy recap, but we did that last week when I introduced you to what I call my pace cycle, or the REBI. And basically the first couple of letters of each of those things literally gives you a clue. So the R is for reflection, and then the B is being that professional, being what it takes to be a professional, right? And then the The PA in PACE, PA is for pause. That's when you take a pause. You pull aside on your pit stop and you work on some of the things that you might have just basically got misaligned on your journey, or you need to make a few repairs in a sense. You need to slow down and just kind of get your mind back on track so you can focus on your race. And then last session we dealt with the charge, right? This is where we talk about during the charge time was the time where we talk about those power banks, and the charge is about just plugging in because we are moved, we are motivated, we are inspired, and literally we are charged up by people and by people, by what's my eye in my pie chart. I'm having a little blank for a moment. All right, so now I got to go back to my board instead of talking out of my head. So by people, by, I'm slowing down here like I forgot what I talk about. My pie, ideas. My mind is locked on today, so I haven't even gone back yet. People, ideas, and events. There we go. And then really when I talked about the charge, I focused on the people section last week when I said, hey, you got to get some peers, you got to get some parents, you got to get some professionals, those people that you plug into, and they're going to literally help you charge up. And so today when we talk about deep deposits, we're going to continue on that vein because the deep deposits, it's almost connected to your charge up. It's connected to those power banks, but it's on that another level. And we wanted to use the term, I wanted to use the term deep deposits to get you thinking of, you know, the depth that you got to go to. Because when we start our goal out, typically you start the goal out, we look back on where we were, we reflected on where we were. And we basically said, man, I need to be better. And I know what I need to do to be better, to do a better job, to better have a better output so I can have a better outcome and so on and so forth. But usually when you start your goal, you don't really have a grand idea when you know of all that it takes. We really don't. Sometimes we really don't. We just said, hey, all we know is I'm down and I want to be up, right? If you ever found yourself in a bad situation that you said, man, if I get out of this, then I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that is. So sometimes when you're down, you know you're down and you're in a low place. You're not thinking about all the things you want to do to come up. And so that's where we're going today. So let me pause right there and just say, this is kind of what we're working with today, right? A little overview. We're going to cover these things and I frame it one way and I'm going to frame it another. So today I'm going to talk about the magnitude of the goal, right? The goal that we're working on, and all our goals are going to be different. Your goal is going to be different compared to the goal I'm working on, and it's going to be different from the goals that other people are working on, right? However, that goal, there's more to it. I'm going to say it that way. There's more to this goal than you first realize, right? Typically when there's a goal, no matter what it is, sometimes there's a little bit more to it than we realize. It's like it's working all engines, all the gears are firing, right? You can say multiple dimensions. It's like we're doing one thing, but at the same time, while that's going on, it's working a lot of other different things. So here we're saying we're going to talk about the magnitude of the goal today. And before I even go any further, let me start the clock. Then we're going to talk about the depth of the goal, and that we kind of allured to in the beginning where we talk about we got to do some deep work, right? The depth of the work we need to do to make sure we can make that thing look really well. And then we're going to end it by talking about the treasure that we're going to unlock, right? Because we're working a little bit with the theme of these deep deposits, right? And so you're going on this journey. And we're going to cover these pieces. So we're kind of working with some of those elements. All right. So I got my clock up there and we're going to begin right now and just kind of walk through this. So let's talk a little bit, like I said, about the magnitude of the goal, that first one. As I've said, when we start off on a journey, regardless of how much planning we do, sometimes there's much more to it. And in our case, when we're saying we're talking on maybe on a level of just saying, hey, here I am. I'm a student in a classroom. I'm a student of life. I am, I could be anywhere from a young adult or something, and I'm trying to count up the cost. I'm trying to figure out the way that I'm going, right? And just doing that alone, sometimes it's hard because we don't know what we don't know. I've heard people say a lot. Sometimes you don't know some things. And even if you ask some questions and or you ask some AI of some sort, you're going to get some answers, but every case is different and everything needs to be tailored. So as we go in now, we're going to figure out the magnitude of this thing. So let me start off by saying this. Right? This is where I'm beginning now. We're going to dive into this part when we say, when we begin the goal, sometimes we don't know what it all entails or where we're going to end up. So I've used this quote and I want you to think about it for a moment. It says that you are more important than the goal that you set. You are more important than the goal that you set. So what we discover is oftentimes we're on a mission. We have a goal in front of us, right? And that goal is important, but it's what the goal does to us that really matters, right? And I think one of my things, I'll get to that in a moment too. So we are more important than the goal that we set. I want you to keep that in mind, right? The goal oftentimes is just there to get you going. The goal, my slides might be out of whack, but I'm going to use this one right here regardless. Let's slide this up. The goals, I have to readjust my slide. The goals is sometimes just the thing to get you on the hook, is what I've said. The goal gets us on the hook. It's like the bait, right? Let's just say I'm planning on going to college. I'm planning on getting in a college degree, right? So that degree might be the bait. Or maybe it's, I want to get a college degree so I can be more defined for employment. Let's just call it that way. I can define myself in a certain area or refine myself in an area. So people see me, they see me as a professional or a subject matter expert or a skilled person in this area. So that might be the goal, right? Good goals, nothing wrong with that. So whether it's to go to college, for example, or to get a certain degree, or to get the definition that I need to be seen as an expert or a subject matter expert or a professional in this area, that's a good goal. So that's what I mean. But now the reality is, no matter what we go out for, that goal has a way of working something in us. And I've said right here, it says, I'm using this analogy when you look through mirrors. That's supposed to be like a side mirror on our vehicle. And it's typically, these mirrors will say something like, objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Right? Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, because when you're looking through a mirror, right, a side mirror, a rear view mirror, for example, it shows you what's there, but it's kind of hard to gauge the distance. It's kind of, in relation to where you are. Now, obviously with driving, there's expertise. You gain some expertise and you become really good at it. However, they want to make sure they put that disclaimer out. It could still look a little off, judging distance. So sometimes the mirror just gives you an idea that something is there, and it might be at a certain distance, but it could actually be a little closer depending on the kind of mirror, right? I bought an off-brand mirror for a rear view mirror for my vehicle, and when I put it on, that's a little bit different, right? It's cool. It's a little wider mirror, but you can tell it has a little different build to it. So objects can seem really far away, for sure, on that mirror, for example. It's not the standard. It's an aftermarket, plus, and sometimes those aftermarket don't have the same standards. So hopefully you get in my point. So the reason why I wanted to reference this is objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. This goal that you set out to do, this mission you're on, that you're saying, hey, a few months from now or several months from now or a year from now, I want to come out better. I want to complete this. I want people to see that I am on top of the world. I'm really great at what I do. Well, the reason why I say I brought this picture up is objects may be closer than they appear, because I want you to think about the goal is closer to you than you realize. It's not just you accomplishing something, doing something so you can shine in front of people, right? Although, yes, we started with that motivation, right? It's not that you can shine and get a pat on the back or whatever the award is or reward or acknowledgement, but it also is closer to you, meaning that thing is going to shape you. That thing is going to shape who you are. And for that, I've added this other little phrase that says the goal works on you while you work towards it. The goal works on you while you work towards it. It's as if you pick the goal you're saying that you want to do, the goal you want to accomplish. You picked it. But now that goal is going to pick at you. It's going to pick you apart, so to speak, because the goal has, in it to stretch you. It has the built in it the capacity to kind of stretch you beyond your comfort zone, so to speak, and stretch you beyond your whatever boundaries or borders you already, or your limits, right? So when you're working towards your goal, yes, it's a really lofty and nice goal, but you got to keep in mind that goal now is going to shape your life. That goal is going to pull you apart. So let's go to the analogy that I use. So now we were talking about, for example, your goal is to get a college degree, or your goal is to make yourself defined by getting a college degree so that people can see you as an expert or a professional in an area. So that was your goal, okay? Now look how this goal picks you apart is what I mean. Look how the goal works on you. Now you're in school, you're learning, you're signing up for classes, you're working with students, you're collaborating, and all of it stretches you. You're going to have group projects that some people in the group that don't pull their own weight, so to speak. They're in the group for whatever reason. They could just be juggling and struggling, trying to keep up with life, right? But that stretches you alone. So look at this is what I mean, how your goal works on you. You just came, look, I'm getting this certification, I'm getting this degree, I'm getting whatever it is just to get my way out. But the experience now begins to stretch you. That's what I mean. The goal begins to work on you, because now you have encounters that you didn't plan on. And even if you plan on it, it's just always work, right? You can know it's coming, but when it happens, it's still a stretch, because now you find yourself carrying the team, so to speak, or just enduring what it takes. So that's one way the goal works on you, right? So, or it could just be working with, engaging your professors or engaging your boss if it's a side job or something, right? So that's what I mean, how the goal is going to work on you while you're working on it. So it's not just you pursuing the goal just to get it. This is why we're saying the goal is closer than you think. It's right. Like the object is closer to you, because now it's personal. It is you being worked on, not while you worked on the goal. And I didn't bring the slide in here. I put these 3 areas in here. For those you get my aftermarket stuff, you'll see it on there. The goal kind of sets you up, right? The goal sets you up. You pick the goal, it sets you up. It was the bait. Now it got you on the hook. And it's fine, because more than what you achieve, I believe there's something in life that brings the best out of us and seeks to bring the best out of us, right? Now, it all depends on what you believe. I believe there is a designer, right, that is behind life and works through things. So anyhow, you're being set up for growth. You've been set up to be stretched by the goal. And then the goal kind of compels you to go further than you want to go. And I'm going to show you an example in a moment, right? And so we'll get to there. So we talked about sometimes if you found yourself in a hole. I shared the story. I was at a church and I was asked to share something, like a testimony from my past. And I shared the story of how I went through all this ordeal. But the part that I want to focus on is I mentioned this when I first had my life experience that forced me to turn to something bigger than me, or someone bigger than me, which is God, right? For me, right? That experience, when I first came, I wasn't looking for the distance. I wasn't looking for the distance, right? I was just looking for the help. So I just wanted to get out of my trouble. I wanted peace. I wanted rest. However, the goal was going to take me further. And I think I forgot one more of my prompts. What happened? All right, created and put it in. So I'm supposed to have on the screen the immediate to the residual, because the goal brings you from the immediate, from what's happening right now, or short term, still immediate, even if it's 9 months. And it brings you to the residual, meaning it brings you to a place where long after you've achieved your goal, it's literally working for you. Not necessarily a goal, but what you've encountered in the process continues to work for you. So if you've developed really good skills, if you've developed really good skills in something, for example, say I took a machine class and I learned how to make some stuff, right? Yeah, I might learn how to make the stuff, right? Or achieve the goal I said we set out for at the end of my 1 year. Let's use that. Let's stick with that story before I go too far. End of the year came. I got recognized for my brilliant and outstanding work. I've been selected. Yay. People applaud me. They give me a plaque. They give me a trophy. They give me a certificate. Maybe they give me a bonus gift card or something. Yay. I got that prize. Tangible, boom. That was the immediate goal that I got. But now here's the residual. The process that I went through to get it, right? How it shaped me. Because, we talked about how the goal before is going to, do all these things. The way it shaped me. Those ideas now is going to stick with me as I move forward, right? So although it's not on the screen, just think and you can write that down. It brings you from the immediate to the residual. The goal that you've set, the goal you've been working on. I don't think I have it, but you've got it now. Just write that thought down. It brings you from the immediate to the residual. Don't know what I did with that one, but okay. So the goal brings you from the immediate to the residual. We've covered that. So like I said, in my story, I only wanted to get help, to be brought from the trouble that I was in. And later on, that was the immediate, to get brought from the trouble and to get some sort of peace and assurance that I'm good. But the residual is, while I was pursuing that life change, it worked some other things in me that I call residual. It continues to pay me over and over again over time. And that's what I mean. When you go through the process of securing your goal, when you don't take the shortcuts and bypass the process, so to speak, it's going to build in you some residuals that just pays you over time, over and over again. The skills you develop, whether back to the example, if it's working with people who don't necessarily pull their weight, or working with people who are rude, for example, the skills you develop while pursuing those goals stick with you over time. Now you've got those life skills. And that happens in anything you find yourself as you show up for a job every day. The skills you build now stick with you, or just growing up in your family. Let's get to the next level. All right. So the next thing I wanted to point out here is this: beyond the surface. The second thing is, remember, we talked about the first thing we said we were going to do on our overview. We were going to talk about the magnitude of the goal. Now I just briefly broke that down and showed you how initially your goal is going to look one way. All you wanted to do was win the prize. But now the goal is more than that. You are being worked on as you picked your goal, right? So now we're going to talk about the depth of the work. And now we're saying is part of when you begin to pursue this goal. We've labeled this one. We've labeled this one deeper deposits, because you need to go deeper to produce what you need to produce. Now let me take you back to my pace chart. There it is. And we've covered all this. We've talked about the reflection at the top in that pink color going to the right clockwise. It says to be a professional. Then we talk about the pause, the pit stop. Last week we said the charge is what we classified it under in our pace cycle. And now we're saying this deep deposit is all about expansion. So the goal is expanding you. Number one, it's expanding you, right? And now let's go back to where we are today. Part of the expansion is taking you deeper, right? It's taking you deeper. And I put up on a blank screen right here. What do you think a lot of the times we interact, we engage people, we are literally on the surface level. What are some things you would put on that surface level? What are some things you think belong on that surface level? Right? So if you take a moment, pause, and jot that down, and then unpause. All right. So you've unpaused. What are some things you had on that surface level? And then what are some things would you put on maybe the next level down, right? So when we engage people, For example, on the surface level, we're always just talking about like hi and bye and how you doing. And how you doing could be a little deeper than surface, but most often than not, we are not looking for deep answers, right? We're not looking for deep answers. We are looking for, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine, and move on for the most part. Or, and we don't really expect a deep answer unless somebody really drops that, Dash, how you doing? And you say you're fine, you're not really fine, and da 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 da, and they go, and then you're on to something. Anyhow, so you can label what you said is layer one, what layer two, and what would it be for a deeper level like layer three? How do you know you're going deeper into a conversation? Pause and write that down. All right. So I am going to now put on my screen. You have written down some of the things that you believe are surface level, number one, and number two would things that you consider to be maybe a second deeper tier, right? Like of engagement with people. And then a third tier, what would you consider going deep, 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 right? Let me pause and let me say this. And it's different in this generation, maybe Gen Z, for example. Anything could be surface level. You guys talk a lot about anime and manga, right? That would still just be a surface level conversation. Now I know some of that storytelling dives into some deep issues, or so to speak, but to me, that's still surface level or whatever, right? Because, and I'll tell you why, because most of it doesn't really deal with you, right? But you can also even push that down in the second level because they're dealing with issues. But anime and manga is still surface level. Talking about sports and game, to me, that's still surface level, right? Game, whether it's the game you play on video games or the game you tried to play in real life, you know what I'm saying? That game of trying to bag a baddie or whatever. That's just the game. That's still a surface level to me because it has no real substance for you long term. So those are surface level interactions, right? And so when you're really trying to create the change or go through the process of this expansion that happens in deeper deposits, you really got to dive. And I missed this because I was staring at one thing, but really to go deeper, it has to do with the people plugins. I mentioned it in before when we talk about the power banks. Last week, I talked more about plugging into the people and the pairs and so forth, but I didn't tell you exactly all that could go on. And so the thing that I wanted to stress before I went too far ahead of myself is, when you plug into people, it's good to have those people have your back, but you have to go beyond the basic. And this is what I just threw up, right? You got to go beyond the basic, plugging into people, right? And here's some layers that I gave you. Number one, I've said you can start to express curiosity, right? Express curiosity when you plug in. This is about asking about maybe some future events. Like you can ask people like, hey, how did you get to this level? How did you do what you do or accomplish what you accomplish? How did you solve or get through XYZ? This is how you go deeper now. When you're connecting to these people in your power banks, you're getting charged up. Well, to do the deeper work and create expansion is you begin to ask questions, right? If you're a younger student, your questions don't necessarily need to be so broad, but maybe you want to ask questions about about what the person is doing, about their goals, about their career. That can help you get insight. What did they like about their career? How did they know that's what they wanted to do? Ask some questions that just beyond, hi and bye and I'm fine. Ask some questions. Have you ever changed your mind about what you wanted to do? I'm just using this as an example, right? If I'm like, say, one of those younger students and I'm trying to learn, well, and I'm plugged into my power banks, I'm going a little deeper. I'm asking questions that genuinely I would want to know, but they're not just the basic, hi and bye, I'm fine, yada, yada, yada. Or he's talk about me and so on and so forth. Let's go a little deeper now. Use them as a resource and ask questions like that. How did you do XYZ? If you're a little older, talk to them about career then, and you can go a little deeper, right? Or you can say, hey, look, when what advice would you give your younger self? Stuff like that. When you were your age, what did you wish you knew when you were your age? Ask some questions. Go a little deeper, based on those power banks that you've already established that we talked about in session 4. We talk about your parents. We talk about, and if you don't have parents that you are in good relationship with, then there's other adults that's in your setting. We talked about teachers and so on and so forth as professionals, right? Or pastors and so on, clergy, right? So ask some of these deeper questions that can take you a little deeper, and you can begin to expand your capacity that way because you're going to learn that way. And then the other idea of my pie chart, when pie connections, the people were one because there were heavy influences we talked about. The other one we mentioned is the I, which was the ideas. And no, you can get a lot of ideas from other places, from books, from reading, from autobiographies, from some, what do you call them? Documentaries, some kind of beat around the bush. Anyhow, some documentaries or reading and other people's work, right? Or other subject matter experts. Leverage the social media and the resources you have then and follow people, not just that are doing things that are trendy, but people who really take you deeper than on the surface level. So we're saying express some curiosity, right? Here's the real meat. And I'm going to talk into this. Solicit some feedback. So I want to share, number one, as a teacher, right? They do these formal observations. They do, right, informal and formal observations. And most teachers probably, want to be over it and probably don't, look forward to it. But the good news out of those formal observations is, you get an instructor who is able to observe you in action. They're knowledgeable. And at the end of it all, they're able to provide you feedback in different areas. This is where you start to move beyond the surface level. Solicit feedback or critique from people, right? This is how you go deeper with people. Solicit feedback on something that you care about, right? Something that matters too. And maybe there's some areas that you don't really care about, but solicit feedback. And then that feedback is important because it allows you to see yourself. And it allows you to see how people see you, which is important. Now, I know some of us will say, man, it doesn't matter to me, man. I don't care what anybody thinks, right? I don't care as long as it's just I'm doing me. We say that a lot, but that's good if you're wealthy and you can just create a little bubble for yourself where you don't depend on anybody. But if you're not wealthy and you don't have a little bubble and you're going to have to interact with people, then it should matter how people see you. Now, back in to be professional, we talk about showing up as a professional, right? In the way we dress and the way we talk and so forth. Well, here's a story. There's a lady named Carla Harrison. She has these pearls. She calls them pearls. And now she used to be, I think no longer, but she used to be an exec on Wall Street for 20 something years, over 25 years, right? She tells a story of in her early years as an executive, or I don't know if she was an executive at that time, but she was on Wall Street. And one of her managers gave her some feedback. Say, hey, something like, you're really nice. Good to have you here. But the exec said, I don't think you're tough enough. She tells the story. Hopefully in the end, if you stick around, I'll give you the reference because it's not up here. And I'm not going to play that today. I try to reduce some of my playing so I don't get copyright problems. But nonetheless, her executive said to her, you're nice, but I don't think you're tough enough for Wall Street, is what she shares her story. I don't think you're tough enough, especially probably because she's a woman on Wall Street and is dominated by a lot of males, just like a lot of places are, except for education. Anyhow, so the feedback she received that he said she was not tough enough. And she says this, and she was very surprised because she thought out of all the things, that's one of the things she is. She grew up, I believe, in Chicago, a tough place. She had to be tough. But for some reason, I guess along the way, she probably let that toughness slide, right? And we can all back away from some of the things that we know or, we grew up with over time. That's just a part of life. We just fall asleep, right? That's why sometimes you do the best work the first 90 days when you get on a job or something like that. Or that's why some students start off really strong the first semester, the first quarter, and sometimes the first semester. And by the time the second semester comes around, they start falling apart. We get it. We all wear and tear. That's why we talk about doing pit stops on session 2, because it's natural. We do fall apart along the way. We do get worn down. So we make those little pit stops just to breathe and refresh ourselves. But back to my point. So she was very surprised that this person would say she was not tough enough. So she said she did this. And I'm just paraphrasing. She recognized, she identified, she suggests find 3 adjectives that people value in the environment you're in. But for her, when the guy said you're not tough enough, she said, oh yeah, from that moment on, she said, she began to walk tough, and she does this little tough walk, right? And she said, I began to talk tough, meaning like somebody asked for a little feedback or for them to critique something. She would say something like, hey, are you sure you want me to look at this? I hope you're not too sensitive because you know I'm tough, right? So she says she began to practice doing that for 90 days until other people began to hear her or see her and began to say, wait, you sure, man? Carla Harris is coming and you know she's very tough. She talks about a transition or a change that happened with her just based on the feedback she received. And then she was able to respond to that feedback. That's my number 3, respond to that accountability, so to speak, and show people that she is tough, because that was the thing that she got critiqued in. Now, for you, it might not be tough. For you, it might be something else. But the point is still the same. Solicit feedback from people, right? So in those power banks that you're connected to, people, if you're hearing things like people are saying, well, you're not responsible enough, you don't show initiative, or maybe they're saying, sometimes you're immature, depending on your age or age level. Maybe a younger student might have that issue. For somebody older, maybe you might get something like, well, how do you manage your time? Or they're not sure how you manage your time. So listen to what people are saying, identify the adjective you need to respond with. And I don't mean to try to clap back, but maybe to identify that, to focus on it. And then you practice that. That's what I mean. Respond to that accountability. You practice that. When I got my I talked a little bit about the teacher observation. When I got critique about my role as a teacher in particular areas, it's all written down. So I won't say I wrote it down, but it's all written down. So I'm able to look at some of the areas that I was challenged on. And then I begin to study it and look at it and at least pick 1 or 2 of those things. It's not like it's a whole bunch of things, but I begin to focus intently on making changes so that when the next observation comes around, they could see that there's been a change. And so I'm saying is, this is how you move from beyond the surface of your relationships and your power banks, and you go deeper. This is particular with people. Now, you can also go deeper by the ideas, by just connecting with those deeper ideas that we mentioned, right? Reading books and biographies and so forth. And we won't talk much about events, but you can do in the same way. Connect yourself to seminars or whatever, workshops or webinars. You can find something, an event going on. They have free stuff online. They have stuff on LinkedIn. So that completes that pie connection table, and it shows you how you can go deeper in all those different areas, because we're talking about deeper deposits, right? So the feedback is how people see you. So you want to know how people see you, because that's important. All right, so let's go into the very last one. And I don't know if I'm sorry I missed that slide on you, but you heard me say it. So the last thing I talk about is gems. Gems. What do you mean about gems? Well, the gems that I'm talking about now is you need a set of guiding principles, right? This is going to help you in this walk, right? This is going to help you in this particular part. So now on number 3, we talk about the magnitude of the goal and saying the goal takes you further than you initially thought it would. It might work you or stretch you in different ways than you thought. It might cause you to go deeper than you initially thought, right? It might take you out of your comfort zone. That's the depth. And now we're saying the treasure to unlock. Out of all this work, there's some treasures to unlock. The more you go through the process, you learn some stuff about you. And then we're talking about moving from the immediate things that are more now, the reward of pursuing your goal now, to stuff that's longer lasting, something that's residual, from the immediate to the residual, right? And so we're saying you're going to come away with some gems, hopefully, right? I shared the story with you about Carla Harris, and she calls these things her pearls, right? Like her nuggets of wisdom based on her experience, based on the sweat equity that she's been in, right? The work that she's put in. Now she come away with a lot. And so she's able to put these pearls together, these precious nuggets of truth, to help her navigate the rest of her journey and to help other people navigate their journey, because she has gone through and discovered out what it takes to succeed. And now she's sharing those pearls. Well, I had them as gems. Now, I refer back to the story. Remember, I already crafted my stuff, but it's interesting that what I'm sharing, you can find somebody who basically supports what I'm sharing or endorses it. Now, I shared this one because I just came across it, and I thought her story fit right into what I planned on putting together from the beginning. So we're saying you got to come out with these gems, right? These gems. And I wrote just your conduct, your conversation, and your convictions, right? When you go through something and you're going through this process, you're going to begin to discover something more about yourself. You might start to discover what matters, right? How you should conduct yourself for what matters, right? How you should talk for what matters. Remember, we referred to the Carla Harris story where she said she began to talk tough, right? So in other words, your conversation should change because of this process. That's how you're expanding. You're going deeper. You realize no matter what age you're at, that you know what, you can change the way you speak. And that matters. These are some of those residuals out of the process. And it could be as simple as not even talking negative to yourself, right? Where maybe before when you didn't get the goal, you used to say things like, well, it didn't matter, or, it didn't matter as much, or, you were just, remember we had an episode where we said something like it was good enough for government work. Some people were just glad they weren't failing. They were glad they weren't failing. So they were okay with a D, or they were okay with a C. Now, if the C was what you labored for and that's all you could get, that's one thing. But if you can, your ability can get you a B or B plus or an A, why not? And since this is the A plus coaching corner, why don't you aim for that A? Anyhow, so you should come away with some of these things that will help you guide the way you conduct yourself. It'll guide the way you talk about life, talk about yourself, and it'll also give you some conviction. These are those residuals, right? Because when you go through a process of pursuing a goal, it should shape you. And what I hope it does, it shapes the way you see yourself and the way you see society, the world, and so on and so forth, right? You should see it differently by going through the process. You should have some convictions. And look, convictions is spelled wrong on here. I forgot the I. So don't criticize me. Sometimes there's some things on here that don't belong. All right. So the convictions is how you see life and how you see things. And we all should have a set of convictions, right, that we work through. I'm going to leave it there because I'm not going to have time to change it, but I will after. Okay. And so what are you discovering? What do you believe? I wrote it like this: identify these convictions that are essential so that when you experience a conflict, a circumstance that challenges you, your intentions, you will have a guide to aid your response. So I think about the story, and for those who work with me in the social studies arena, when we make the connection, because there's a reason why we're doing this, we also make it relevant. I use something like the Mayflower Compact. When these guys came to this new world and they were just outside the governed area, before they got off the ship, they sat down and they wrote their agreement, their contract on how they're going to conduct themselves. They're going to govern themselves in this area. right? They went through this process. They went through this long journey across the ocean. And before they got on land, because the story is they missed their landing spot. They were outside. So it was essential for them to basically write some guiding principles to govern them, some gems, right? Figured how they were going to conduct themselves, right? And a lot and how they were going to speak to one another. And yes, it's based on the convictions that they had. So while you're doing this deep digging that you find yourself in, going through this process, and you're plugged into your power banks and you're learning from them and you're asking deeper questions, you're not just these surfacey things, and it's expanding you, it's building your capacity now because you're learning more than just what it takes, or you're gaining knowledge for more than what it takes to get your goals, because that's how it stretches you. While you're in this place, it's good to begin to shape and write down some of these things that can help direct or guide you going forward, right? These convictions we talk about, right? So look at that as you go through, right? Because those are going to be some things you discover along the way. And the only reason why you discovered them, it's because you signed up for the goal. So let's pause it right there. Let me see if I can bring up my chart real quickly to show you where we left off. I'm just adjusting this before I bring it up. All right. Now, hopefully this works. Let's go to present. All right, we're kind of there. And we're going to look at this chart real quickly. Safari. There we go. All right. It's supposed to be seeing my Safari, but it's way over there. All right. So I just wanted to run through my chart to catch us up on where we are. So we're looking at this last section that talks about the expand section. This is our deep deposits, right? And so let's look at the beginning. We talked about the immediate to the residual, the goal that we've been pursuing. This goal that I had in mind is taking me further than I anticipated, right? It's stretching me. It's causing me to grow in different areas, which is awesome, right? We didn't necessarily have it in our initial intention. We perhaps didn't know it was going to stretch us the way it did, but it is stretching us, and that's good. And that's good. There's a part of the human nature. We're a little bit selfish. Yes, we are selfish. Don't defend yourself. We're all selfish to some extent. We kind of want what's in it for me, right? And even less than that, sometimes we just want that tangible thing, that shiny thing. So even though we jumped on this goal, and what we used to motivate us was 1 year from today, we wanted to be recognized. We wanted people to certainly not had to just say, man, it was tough having you around. You made it hard for me. I just did what I could to make it through. No, we want people to say, man, I'm glad you were on board, right? So we still had a selfish desire. It was small. But now, while we're locked into this thing, it began to expand us, right? And we're talking about the last column over here, right, where it says expand. And we went from we went from the immediate to the residual, from the immediate gratification, from that immediate award that we receive, that recognition to receive. But now we've built up so much skills and knowledge and just character growth within ourselves that it becomes residual. It becomes something that pays us over and over again. People next year and people 2 years from now will say, wow, you are disciplined. Wow, you are assertive. Wow, you are tough. You are resilient. And they're going to marvel at us. But all those are the residuals that's paying us from the goal that we targeted this year or last year, whenever it is you see this thing. That's the power of the goal. The magnitude of the goal is bigger than where we began. So hopefully that part sinks into your head. You went out for it just for the prize, but now look at what the process has done in my life. It's caused me to not just run for the immediate, but it creates this thing that I'm rewarded or paid over and over and over and over again as residual. And then on the second part down here, we talked about we move from beyond the surface. This is the part where we said the depth of the goal, right? The depth of the goal, right? And we want to move from the basic surface level, particularly into our plugins. And when we're saying our plugins, our power banks, those people that we're plugged into, those connections that we have, some of the same people who might have pull us aside in our pit stops, who we go to and maybe help us maybe calm down or refocus, right? Some of those same people now we're going deeper, right? We are going deeper with those relationships. We're asking them, we're expressing curiosity in what they're doing, right? We're asking them about themselves, their life, how they got to where they got to. Is this the work they wanted to do, or how did they succeed, right? We're asking them things like that. We're expressing curiosity in more than just the basic. And then we're soliciting feedback. We're saying, tell me, what do you see? Tell me, how am I doing? Where do you think I need to improve on the most? What is one thing, bit of advice you can give me now? Or what is one area you see that I need to work on, right? We're soliciting feedback. Now, it depends on where you are. Some of these places, you're probably going to get feedback built in. But if it's not, if these are informal relationships, then you can make them more formal, right? We talked about the people on the Mayflower coming to this country where they made an agreement, right? They made an agreement, or they made a contract, the Mayflower Compact, on how they were going to govern themselves. You know, you can make an agreement with some of these people you're in a relationship with. In your power banks, the people that you plug into, you can ask them, hey, do you mind? Can I come to you for help in this particular area? Would you mentor me? Right? Sometimes you can ask. And you can write down some brief little points on what you want to be mentored on, and you sign it and ask them to sign it. And you can say, hey, let's do this for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, just so it can help me be accountable. That's the very last part. Respond to accountability, right? So you see that there. So this is what we're in it for. This is going to help us grow and go deeper beyond, just the basic. Now you're going a little deeper, right? All right. And then we said there's curiosity and all that. You can go not just with the people that you're plugged into, but the ideas and the events. Like we talked about events like seminars, workshops, any kind of PDU, professional development, things like that, or events too, right? Or just being around other people. It could be with a group of people that's doing something, or like a service, a Sunday service, that works, a chapel. Any little thing like that is still kind of an event that can still power you up. And then we ended up by saying, then you gotta, while you're in that process, just like those people there on the Mayflower wrote this little contract or this compact that they did, you can actually identify some treasures, some gems out of your own experience. And you can begin to write them down and help it shape your convictions on, say, you know what? I'm going to give myself these 3 things that I want to operate. I said 3 things, but I'm holding up 4 fingers. 3 things that I want to do, that I'm going to hold by, right? And you can make those personal. It could be your anthem. You see me got anthem down here. It could be like an anthem that you go by. I know we say an anthem, sometimes there's a song or something that's like that, our song. Well, fine. If you want to find a song that can speak to you in such a way that is so positive or so reinforcing of your ideas, hopefully it's positive, that it helps you get through the tough time. It helps you stay focused. It helps you be kind and courteous. It helps you be responsible or whatever. Or you create your own little anthem or poem or something that does that for you. But you can call it your anthem. But I just wrote it. It should help guide your conduct, your conversation, and literally your convictions, what you believe about the world and your life, and shape your worldview, right? That is important. So there we've kind of plugged it all in, summarized all these pieces for you here at the end. Easy review. And that's where we're ending it today. So we took you on this journey to cover these different areas. I'm hoping that by now you got a good little overview. Now, one of these sessions don't tell you all, but you'd have to be able to look back at the different things here. I'm going to do it in the blue chart that we went over and monitor this process or this pace cycle. And this helps you to keep everything going, right? So what I want you to be able to do is, if you haven't yet, check for if you want to go a little deeper, a little diver. Don't be afraid to reach out. The contact information is going to be on this website at coachingcorner.com. And if you have maybe some people that you're working with or want to work with, you can reach out for that packet, which will be on the website coming before the end of the month, I will say. Before the end of the month, as we fine tune for those who want a downloadable content, digital content, hopefully it's digitally ready or something we can mail out to you. And what I want you to be able to use this for is a tool that you can either work in for yourself, or maybe you have somebody that you want to mentor or help work through a difficult time or work through the school year or work through a next 9 month. And you're going to use this framework, this cycle, this Reebok cycle to reflect on something that has a reflection point, to be a professional, to pause, do pit stop, to charge, and to have more activities and then expand and deposit. And so the download will have more content and more activities that you can work on. And I'm also tying it to social studies. So if you have a school-age child, maybe the middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they can work with this document as well, especially learning something that like history that sometimes can be a tough subject because most people look at it, or students can look at it as it's old and hard to tag along. Well, this we can bring it to life a little better. So that's where I'm going to end it for today. So remember, that will be there by the end of the month on the website. And I wanted you to be able to use that to either help work through a tough time or a difficult time of any sorts, but also too, it could help you no matter where in life you are, because I'll tell you one thing, as an adult, I use this and can use this to keep on making sure that I'm putting forth my best, right? And so you can use it as an adult, or you can use it with somebody you know to help them work through wherever they are. So I am done for today. I wanted you to thank you for joining me on this last of the session that I call Deep Deposits. We have ran the race, we have kept the fight, and we are well within the time frame that we said we would. So stay in touch. If you have not followed, follow, so you'll know the next time I do a live session. But there won't be a live session for the next week or two. But we'll make some adjustments. Follow CarvelMonroe.com. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel. And that's where I ended for today. What are you waiting for? Get out of here. Go do something. Peace.